Welcome back, Dunc Holder. Jim Derry sitting in for Jeff Duncan, who will return tomorrow. Of course, Clyde Verdon's here. Dave's back in the iHeart Studios. And joining us, Amos Morale, jack of all trades. We could talk to him about anything. He'd come on here and he'd probably know more about things than me.
Well, that doesn't take much.
I know, but why are you trying to diss Amos? I'm trying to prop him up.
I'm not trying to diss Amos. I'm dissing you.
You're trying to diss me. Amos Morale.
My last day, I got to get my shots in.
There you go. I'll get right here on Dunc Holder. National Signing Day coming up tomorrow. And Amos, the two big names, of course, that are floating out there that LSU fans are looking at, Patrick Surtain Jr., Jamar Chase. Are LSU fans going to be disappointed with their decisions come tomorrow as far as the way you kind of read this thing?
I don't really see him being too disappointed. I mean, Patrick Surtain's been, rumored to be an LSU lean for a long time. The Tigers have been on him since he was a freshman. He's got ties to the area. So, Corey Raymond's still the DB coach. There's a lot of things working in LSU's favor to kind of get him on board. And then if you're Jamar Chase, I know Auburn's making a really hard push. They got him on campus last, but he wasn't there as long as he's been at some of these other visits. And you got to think that he looks at that roster. He sees a pretty good opportunity for him to go in and make an impact right away. So I think that those two got to be LSU's got to be feeling really good about them.
Amos, tomorrow obviously a huge day for us, and I know you're excited about getting this behind you. What if you had to name a couple names who might be a big surprise tomorrow, whether they go to LSU or don't go to LSU, or where they might go? Who should we be looking at as far as surprises?
Well, first off, I like how you decided to take vacation on the big
Amos, I'm gonna take off the first round of the draft. Do you think I think I'm gonna do that?
So anyway, but in terms of guys that are kind of the big ones to watch outside of the Jamar Chase and the Patrick Surtain, there's the two kids from McDonald 35, Joe Fuchsia, big-time safety, and wide receiver Lawrence Keyes, who's an absolute burner. Joe's taking official visits to Arkansas and Ole Miss, and it looks like it's going to come down to those two for him. Arizona State and Auburn are still making a push, but he seemed to really like what happened after he visited Arkansas, and then Ole Miss has been recruiting him pretty hard. And then you look at Lawrence Keyes, he's got Texas, Notre Dame, and SMU. And one of the things he told me is that his mom wants him to play close, so he might end up at one of those Texas schools. So you got a couple kids there, and then also you got Eddie Smith out at Bauman, who was a longtime TCU commit. His recruitment, he decided not to sign with him on signing day, and then his recruitment just kind of took off. Alabama offered, and it seems like they're in strong position to land him. Nick Saban went and did the Cupid shuffle at his house, so you got quite a few kids.
I've seen that video.
Period.
Saban's got some moves. Hey, he's a charmer.
Don't say he won't do anything for to get a recruit.
Hey,
you don't win those national championships with bad players.
No, you don't. Amos Morale joining us right here on Dunc Holder. We're talking National Signing Day. That is tomorrow. Of course, they had the early signing period. And Amos, along those lines, when you talk to some of the kids that are still out there, is it different than maybe what you've seen in the past? Are there more teams even more heavily involved because there are fewer kids out there that haven't already signed on the dotted line?
Well, yeah, that's one thing you can see, and you see it just by where, how these kids in home visits are going, whereas in the past there may be one or two coaches. LSU sending its whole staff to Jamar Chase's living room, and quarterback out of Alabama, James Foster. They're sending their whole staff to all of these kids' living rooms, whereas in the past they might have, been able to send the position coach, and then they had the head coach bouncing everywhere to kind of try and seal the deal. So they're able to put a lot more effort into these last few guys and really increase the pressure. And then when the kids go on their official visits, there's only a couple of them going now, so they're getting a lot more personal attention. So that's one thing that these kids are noticing is that they're they didn't sign early, they're getting a lot more of that full court press because those coaches are able to turn a lot of that attention directly to them because, in LSU's case, they only have 4 spots left. So it's one thing that a lot of kids are seeing compared to some of the past classes that I've talked to.
Yeah, Amos, that was actually going to be my question to you about this hard cap now on how many players that coaches can sign and kind of some of the different rules about if you sign a kid but then he doesn't play or he's ineligible, that still counts towards your number. What has this number now done in terms of coaches having to really zero in on kids and then really have to figure out and make a numbers game out of it, almost like a shell game, of how they're going to go about recruiting some of this top talent, knowing that there's now a hard cap in the NCAA?
Well, one thing, it just really makes them, whereas in the past you might have been able to just take some of the better players that were available, you really got to focus on your needs and really focus on filling those positions that, you feel you're lacking in. You look at what LSU did. They really did a lot to go after offensive linemen and defensive linemen in this class, interior guys, really kind of beef up the trenches because that's an area they felt they lacked last season. In terms, one of the things, though, that seems to be more the case is with this early signing period, though, is you're kind of locked into those kids early, so you have to be a lot more sure of what you want and what positions you were hoping to fill. Whereas in the past, with the whole class signing in February, if after the season you realized, all right, well, maybe we don't need as many offensive linemen, one of the kids or a kid decides he wants to go somewhere else, you get a spot opening up here or there. So really what it's done is it's just kind of forced these teams to really take a look at what they need and be a lot more concise with their recruitment.
Amos, you said LSU 4 spots. Who do you think are going to fill those 4 spots tomorrow?
Well, I got to think it's going to be Sertan Jr. I think they're able to land Jamar Chase. I think they pick up Mario Goodrich out of a cornerback out of Missouri, who they've been going after for a while, and I think that's going to be one of the spots. And then lastly, it'll be Kelvin Joseph, the safety out of Scotlandville. He was committed to him for a long time, decided to reopen his recruitment and, take advantage of see what the other schools were offering, but he recommitted to LSU at the Army Bowl. So I think they're going to get his signature, and I think that's how this class will finish up.
Amos, do you think that LSU, we were talking about in the last segment before how they got Riverside quarterback Jordan Loving as a preferred walk-on. Do you feel like LSU scaled back on trying to land a quarterback as far as on scholarship because of A, who they have, and B, just picking up Jordan, or am I reading too much into this?
Well, you're going to need guys to throw the ball, through camp and practice. So, bringing in a preferred walk-on, they usually try to get one of the guys around the state to come on board, compete for a spot. But they were going after James Foster, a quarterback out of Alabama, a dual-threat guy, a big arm. He's got offers from Alabama, Florida State, Texas A&M. So he's one that they were really going after. They put the press on him. They, sent the whole staff out to visit him. I just have a hard time seeing him, taking the Tigers over some of those other offers. It seems like he's got, better opportunities at some of these other places. And then if you're LSU, you've got 2 guys that could end up being big-time players for you, in Miles Brennan and Lowell Narcisse, depending on how they develop. And plus, recently, with all the coaching shake-up, a couple of the 2019 guys that were committed are, all of a sudden back on the board. You take a look at Grant Gunnell, who's a quarterback out of Texas, 2019 prospect, big kid, huge arm, can throw it all over the field. He was committed to Texas A&M, but with the, change in coaching staff, he's reopened it, and LSU had him on campus a couple weekends ago for a visit, along with some, a bunch of wide receiver prospects that he's interested in playing with. So, they're all of a sudden back in it with a lot of these 2019 prospects. So it makes it, I guess, a little less important that you land a quarterback, a scholarship quarterback in this class when, you really need to replenish that defensive backfield because you're going to lose a couple of those guys to the draft, a couple to graduation. So I think I can see them, getting by without landing a scholarship quarterback in this class.
Amos, sorry to step away. Had a pretty important call from a coach. Talk about my area of expertise. Obviously, we're all doing it, the whole area now, but my area of expertise is the North Shore. And talk about Eddie Smith and Devin Brumfield a little bit, and what do you see for them tomorrow, and where do you see them? Do you think they can compete for to be starters in their freshman year?
Well, Eddie, obviously, Alabama's made a really strong push. He's a guy that they like. Eddie is obviously he's a really gifted athlete. They've played him all over the place at Salmon, so he's a little raw when it comes to the particulars of being a defensive back. So that's what they're recruiting him as, and I can see him obviously just he's obviously a hard worker. He seems to pick up things very fast. You can see it in his highlight tapes. How much he improved at just the technique and being a defensive back. So I can see him, if he does pick in Alabama, I can see him, finding a way to at least get on the field and contribute with special teams, maybe cracking the depth chart, come in. But, with Alabama, obviously they're recruiting at a high clip, so it's hard to say, he'd go in there and be a starter right away. With Devin Brumfield, a lot of the programs that are recruiting him, I could definitely see him, going in and earning a starting job or at least significant playing time. I know Louisiana Tech's a program that's really been after him. So if they were able to find a way to land him, that's a place where he could go and make an immediate impact.
Amos Morale, he'll be all over the map tomorrow. Follow him on Twitter at Amos_Morale III. And Amos, appreciate the time as always, my friend.
Oh, anytime, man.
All right, that's Amos Morale. National Signing Day is tomorrow. We will be blanket coverage here at NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. Why don't we take a break right here on the show? Don't forget, top of the 11 o'clock hour, we will talk with Ted Jackson. He was the journalist who did an amazing outlook on Jackie Wallace dealing with substance abuse, former Super Bowl player, St. Aug standout, and we will chronicle his story. And look, we will take your phone calls as well throughout the show, 504-260-1280. You'll also hear from Alvin Gentry, his thoughts on the Pelicans' loss last night to the Utah Jazz, 133-109. So come on back, Sports 1280, NOLA.com, and the iHeartRadio app. Dunc Holder.